The following podcast may contain adult language and conversations revolving around situations not suitable for immature audiences. Spoilers and general political incorrectness can often be expected, so listener discretion is advised.
They must be destroyed on sight!
Okay, welcome to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight, a movie podcast, and we're back for some more film noir and crime and all that good stuff. I'm your host, Lee Russell. I'm joined by my two co-hosts this week. We got them both back. Daniel Harper, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just fiddling around with our Facebook page there, Lee.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I mention that? I wasn't supposed to, I guess. You know.
Yeah, it's terrible. No one needs to know about that shit. But how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you.
Awesome. And we have Paul Romali back. How you doing, sir?
I don't have any shameless plugs.
That's all right.
Bye. I'm fine. I'm good. Yay!
That's great. Yeah, we're going to be talking about Kiss of Death from 1947 here in a little while, although we do have a little bit of sort of house cleaning to do here first. I just want to make a brief...
You're shit-canning me from the podcast, right? Like, that's what's happening? You brought me on. This is an intervention.
Daniel, you have to stop. You have to cut the beard. It's over. No, I want to make a brief mention, a podcast recommendation that I've been listening to for a little while now. They're only a couple episodes in. It's called the Hail Ming Power Hour. They're on legionpodcast.com, which is a sort of network of podcasts. There's actually some pretty good ones on there that I listen to all the time. But I just started listening to this one, and it's really fun. It focuses on movies in the 80s. So far they've done, of course, Flash Gordon from the 1980s with the awesome Queen soundtrack. They've done Big Trouble in Little China, The Golden Child, Clash of the Titans in their latest episode. So they're covering all kinds of cool sort of, and also The Last Starfighter. They're cool. They're covering all like the really coolest fucking 80s films.
They're from the 80s, so I might have actually watched them.
Yeah, definitely worth listening to. They just started out, but they have great production, and it's a lot of fun. So yeah, check them out. Definitely, by the time you hear this, they'll be linked in our Podbean page as well. So the Hail Ming Power Hour. Want to mention how much I appreciate the interaction we've gotten so far on our Facebook page. It's been really good. We've had some really good suggestions for films. We had guys like Cameron Sullivan offering some suggestions for our sex comedy series that we're going to do later this spring. Dinosaur Island is definitely one I want to go after. Stuart Balk for Midnight New Movie Cowboys wanted to see us do maybe like Gas Pump Girls or the Hard Body series. So I think we almost have our sex comedy series continuation set in stone at this point. And Daniel made a good suggestion earlier tonight as well. So we'll have like one serious sex comedy, and then we'll have like a bunch of really silly ones as well to throw in there. So it'll be fun.
Shout out to Robert Hook.
Robert Hook, exactly. He joined in as well. And yeah, I'm enjoying the interaction that our members have been giving us. It's great. If you have films you want us to see us do, please feel free to comment on the board. That's what it's for. So.
Or just movie conversation in general. Like, yes. I'd love to see people just sit and chat about movies they like, you know, because that's why we do this. Really, is just to. I mean, I'm glad that people enjoy it, but for me, this is just like getting to hang out with two guys I like to talk about movies, you know. So, you know.
Yeah. So anyway, we can move from there, and we can immediately transition into what we've been watching lately. I'll start with you, Paul. If there's anything you've watched in the last little while you want to mention.
I actually watched a really good werewolf movie that's new, which was surprising because it's new, and I'm bitter. It's called Blood Moon, and It was really good. The CGI is minimum, and they finally, like, it's nice to see someone actually use shadow and fog and mist and light to, you know, make the character, the werewolf, a little bit more creepy, and, you know, so it's not so blatant. And it's set in more of the colonial western time.
Okay.
So, I mean, it definitely has a really cool thing to it, and it uses the Native American Indaleoshi kind of skinwalker
right.
vibe to it, so it's really cool. It was actually really fun to watch, and I watched Django.
Did ya?
Ooh.
Oh, wait, which Django? Which Django? The original?
The original Django.
From 68 or 66 or 68? I can't remember which date it is, but
Somewhere in there. Yeah, unfortunately, I rented a bunch of things. I rented Django Strikes Again and Seven Samurai, and yeah, I just rent movies and take them back.
yeah.
I don't watch anything, so. But I actually managed to watch
Still
Django.
supporting your local store. That's good.
Exactly.
That's a good boy. Yeah.
That's the way to do it, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Daniel, I know you have quite a few things to mention, so I'll let you go right into it.
Sure. One thing I watched, I'll just mention this, Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, 1969. That's the quote-unquote Serious 6 comedy. We're definitely going to cover it on this show because I insisted, and Lee was scared of me, so we're going to definitely do that. I won't talk about it now, but it's brilliant. I saw With Nail and I for the first time. From '87. This is Paul McGann and Richard E. Grant as a couple of drug-addicted inebriates who basically spend an entire film boozing. It's a dark comedy. It's an independent movie. About a third of the film in the middle is built on the thread of gay rape, which is always a good time, really. This is simultaneously a really brilliant film and really, really problematic, as you can tell. It was definitely worth a watch, but it's very much like you just be aware of what you're getting into. But that was my first chance to get to see it, and I really enjoyed it.
I love that film.
Yeah,
definitely. It's fucking hilarious.
It is hilarious. I mean, I don't want to undersell it. I'm just saying, like, that was definitely an experience, like a film experience. So.
It definitely balances hilariousness with cringe.
Yeah, it's got a lot of cringe, and some of it was, some of it is like even in '87, like they're doing it intentionally, and some of it is like, yeah, this hasn't aged well, and I think it's kind of an equal measure, but it is really, really wonderful, and it's really focused on character. It's got a lot going on. It's worth watching. I watched The Boy with Green Hair. This is actually, I mentioned this because it was directed by the same guy that did the 1951 M. Mm-hmm. And I had kind of tracked that down because I had kind of seen people talk about it. It's got a young Dean Stockwell, and by young Dean Stockwell, I mean he's the boy, the little boy in the film.
Yeah, talking Dunwich, you're talking really young.
Yeah.
This is a pretty fun little goofy movie about a boy who wakes up one morning and has green hair. I mean, like very, very overtly green. It's a message picture. It's kind of very much in that kind of old studio system. It's really about kind of the plight of war orphans, which was a kind of a big deal in '48. It's also kind of easy to read as kind of a metaphor for being gay or being trans or being kind of an outsider in general. Edward James Olmos actually lists this as one of his favorite movies, of all time. It's worth tracking down. It's not something I would say is probably like in the wheelhouse of most of the people listening to this show, but I enjoyed it. My wife Shanna sat and watched it with me, and we both kind of got a lot out of it. It was worth the kind of 85 minutes or whatever. So check that out. It does have a distinctly kind of communist witch hunt attitude, atmosphere to it as well at times.
I just want to watch it because you mentioned Dean Stockwell was in it. I love Dean Stockwell.
Yeah, I mean he's literally like 10 years old or something. I mean this is a very young Dean Stockwell.
Yeah.
So, but he's quite good. I mean he's a child actor, but you don't get like the obviously he's kind of one of those, he was cute and didn't have any talent. I mean
we'll be talking a lot about him when we do Blue Velvet in a couple of weeks.
I know Dean Stockwell from Quantum Leap. I grew up on Quantum Leap, so I'm always down with that. So let's see, what else did I watch? I'm trying to do these in kind of a fun order. I watched a movie from the 80s. I watched National Lampoon's The Joy of Sex. This is the version I found was really very much a VHS rip. Somebody had ripped it from a pan and scan VHS. It was in shitty quality. I think it's on YouTube actually, and it's pretty forgettable. I mean, it's not terrible. It's just really forgettable, kind of 86 comedy without any real nudity in it. The reason I kind of tracked it down was because it was directed by Martha Coolidge, who directed one of my favorite movies, Real Genius.
Oh, really? Okay.
And it stars Michelle Mayrick, who is Jordan in Real Genius, and who is kind of had a career for. She's Gilbert's girlfriend in Revenge of the Nerds, if you remember.
Oh, okay.
She's quite good. This really doesn't take advantage of her talents at all. I mean, her great role is in Real Genius, but that was kind of the reason I tracked it down. I'm like, oh, I should actually watch this. This looks kind of cute. It's worth like if you can get it, it's worth kind of sitting down and watching it, but it's not. It's not very good.
Actually, this spring we should probably do Real Genius, because I know you wanted to do it last time for the sex comedy series. So
yeah, it's not even really a sex comedy, so I wouldn't even do it as part of that series. But I would absolutely. I mean, Real Genius is a movie we should definitely discuss at some point. Let's see. I watched The Skull. This is an Amicus film.
Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing, yeah, and really the reason to watch this is for Peter Cushing.
Yeah, that is maybe my top 3 performances from him. The physical performance he does in that film is fucking amazing.
Yeah,
didn't City of the Dead cover it?
City of the Dead covered it, yeah. A couple months ago, actually. I'm a little bit behind on them. I didn't get to watch The Psychopath yet, which is their most recent episode, but I should get that watched for next week. But I did sit down and watch The Skull. I really enjoyed The Skull, and I think we should cover it on the show at some point.
Yeah, we definitely will.
It's a small film. It's a smaller. I mean, it's not like it's. I kind of expect like, oh yeah, like it's Peter Cushing, and it's kind of. I expect it kind of big, kind of thematically, and it does have that, but it's really just kind of this creepy 85-minute little mini masterpiece, but that almost oversells it,
And it's got Christopher Lee playing the good guy.
Christopher Lee. It's got Peter Cushing and some other people. So fun. One more. I watched. I've been following this actress from the 40s. I've been kind of watching some of her movies. Linda Darnell, who was kind of one of those forgotten kind of screen sirens from the 40s. And I watched a movie called Fallen Angel. This is a noir picture. It is from 1947 or 48, something like that. This is a movie kind of about a guy who tries to marry this woman to get her money, and then she ends up killed, and then he gets threatened with he's kind of fingered for the murder, and it's kind of about the murder investigation. It's a really convoluted. I don't want to say convoluted, but it's got it's much more. It's much less focused than I've made it sound. It's really got this kind of interesting kind of character study in a way. It's a fun movie. This one is definitely worth watching. What's funny is I was watching this, and I had told my wife that I was kind of following this actress Linda Darnell, and that I was kind of like, oh, I just found a bunch of movies she was in, and I'm watching them because I kind of fell in love with her. She didn't know who the actress was. She hadn't seen her before. And then the second she saw her, she went, oh, that one. Yeah, I get it. You know why? Because she's like fucking sassy as shit. And she doesn't take any shit from anybody. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's it. She knows I have a type. It's fine. So Fallen Angel. It's worth checking out. It's not a great film, but it's a nice little noir picture. And I'm watching a bunch of noir in addition to the noir we're watching for the show. So
nice.
Yeah, fun times.
Awesome.
Before you go on, I actually forgot to tell you, I watched a serial killer movie that you'd like. I think you'd like it anyway. It's called 213.
Okay. And
I thought it was going to be Dahmer, but it's not. It's more of a crazy kind of a killer that uses masks and things like that, but it's pretty interesting. So check it out, 213. And then I watched 2 of the films that hopefully we'll do later of the 4. Was Tombs of the Blind Dead and Return of the Evil Dead, and so I did actually transfer those 2.
We're definitely going to do the Blind Dead series at some point.
Man, sorry to interrupt, but
no, it's all right. That's all right. You've been gone for a couple weeks, so whenever you feel like interjecting, just do it.
How dare you talk on this podcast? That's my job.
You son of a bitch.
It took me like 6 weeks to get 4 films watched, so there you go.
Major accomplishment.
Yeah. Unemployment has its perks.
The only thing I really watched was this film, and actually it was just like yesterday I watched it. I was just scrolling through Netflix, and it was like featured on Netflix. It's called Indigenous from 2014. It's about a bunch of these incredibly beautiful young Americans going to Panama and taking a little trip into what is called the sort of Darien Gap, I believe it's called. It's the only break in the sort of Pan American Highway or whatever.
The Straits of Gibraltar?
No, not Gibraltar. The Panama Canal.
Oh, the Panama Canal. I don't know what that's called. Okay, I was like,
it's the only jungle break. It's the only break in it. It's this like 50-kilometer jungle patch of like jungle and swampland and shit. And basically, what it does is it sets them up to be hunted by like chupacabra, basically.
yeah, I like
it's
it.
Not. It's not a great film as far as acting.
Is there breasts in it?
No, sadly, there's not. It's a beautifully shot film. It looks really great. There's like sort of side boob and stuff in it for the most part.
Side boob, yeah.
Side boob's all right. But the actors they're all right, but they're all one note. The writing is terrible for them. And the movie, if you remember The Descent, this is essentially The Descent, but instead of in a cave for most of the movie, it's out in the jungle under the canopy of the jungle instead. Because the quote-unquote chupacabra looks basically just like the fucking monsters from The Descent for the most part. It wasn't bad, though. I mean, it was an agreeable waste of like an hour and a half. But
fun monster flick, right?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. Good gore, good effects. Like I said, the acting wasn't that great.
Here's the question. Does it pair with Aguirre, The Wrath of God?
No, not even fucking close.
Did anybody get crushed by a boat?
No.
No?
Not even
no
fucking
crewmen
close.
died?
But there were some interesting characters. Like there's this like the American kids, they meet up with some locals there at the bar where they're just drinking and hanging out on the beach and shit. And the locals are like, don't go into that fucking patch of woods or the jungle or whatever because people go missing there. And they try to implement it's not a found footage film, but they implement the sort of aspects of found footage in a way because they show like a found footage thing of other guys who were in that place on the internet who all of a sudden went missing and died or whatever. So there's a little bit of that on there. And as far as the found footage stuff goes, it's not as annoying as a lot of found footage films where you see fucking a fucking battery bar going across the screen or whatever, because if you watch a fucking video that you recorded on a fucking video camera, you don't see the fucking battery bar on the fucking playback of the video.
Right.
So I mean,
you know how many horror movies would have never happened if entitled white people would just learn how to take a hint, like don't go in there. Okay, cool.
That's sort of the message of the film too. It's like they make the point when they start off the film. It's like every culture has stories about monsters living off in the distance or whatever, taking people away, and a lot of people believe they're true, and then they go into it, and it's like, so this is one barren piece of jungle that nobody's really lives in, and it's like people have disappeared there, so they use that to sort of build up the sort of mythology underneath the film, and it works. It could have been a way better film, but for what they did, it's actually not too bad. So I would recommend a watch with caution. I mean, don't go in expecting anything great. I mean, if you're having a few beers and you have nothing else to watch on Netflix, fucking go after it.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, we can jump right into our main event here for tonight, and it's going to be Kiss of Death from 1947.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. North and South America, and all the ships at sea. Let's go to press. This is Walter Winchell broadcasting from Hollywood. I just came from a projection room at 20th Century Fox Studios where I saw a picture of my town, New York, and my time now. Ladies and gentlemen, the title of this moving picture is Kiss of Death. In underworld lingo, Kiss of Death can be many things, none of them good. A pat on the shoulder from a pal that turns into a bullet in the back, or a kiss from a woman's warm lips that sends the victim to the morgue. Like Boomerang and the house on 92nd Street, this one has authenticity stamped all over it. It is red meat. It is factual. It's a close-up of the tenderloin in action. Its tempo is terrific. And its story is that of a squealer. In underworld code, a squealer is marked for death. One man sneered at the code, squealed, and didn't die. That's what makes Kiss of Death such a gripping and exciting moving picture.
Kids like to have fun. We'll all have some fun together. You and me and your wife and your kids.
Touch my family and you'll hear singing like you never heard before. Go on, beat it.
Nick, he's a 3-time loser now. All we've got to do is catch him with a gun on him, and we can send him up for life.
And suppose he don't make a mistake. He didn't the last time. You made the mistake.
Sooner or later, he'll trip himself up. They all do. You've got to trust me.
I'm through trusting you, the police, or anybody but me. There's only one way to get you, though. And that's my way.
If you like action as I do, with entertainment, you'll find it here. This one was written with a machine gun.
Directed by Henry Hathaway. Most people probably know him from The Sons of Katie Elder, True Grit, and 2 Rommel films, The Desert Fox and Raid on Rommel. So he's a fairly well-known director from back in the day. Written by Ben Heche, Charles Lederer, who is probably really mostly known for Mutiny on the Bounty and Ocean's 11 and The Thing from Another World, based on a story from Elazar Lispy. And Philip Dunn also added some extra to the screenplay. It is starring Victor Mature as Nick Bianco, Brian Donlevy as Assistant DA Louis D'Angelo, Colleen Gray as Nettie, Richard Widmark in his debut role as Tommy Udo, who is a well-known character actor, Death of a Gunfighter, To Devil a Daughter, Warlock, How the West Was Won, Judgment at Nuremberg are some of his major films. Taylor Holmes as Earl Hauser, Edward Smith as Warden, Carl Malden, another famous actor, most people probably know him from Patton, as Sergeant William Cullen, and Anthony Ross as Big Ed Williams. And I'll throw it over to you, Daniel, for the synopsis.
Kiss of Death, 1947. In the opening sequence, ex-con Nick Bianco, Victor Mature, unable to provide for his family doing honest work due to prior convictions, is part of a 4-man team robbing a jewelry store on Christmas Eve. He is shot in the leg and captured while his compatriots go free. An apparent believer that snitches get stitches, and believing that his wife and children will be taken care of by his lawyer, Taylor Holmes, while he's in prison, Bianco refuses to reveal the identities of his compatriots, even upon pressure from the Assistant DA Louis D'Angelo, Brian Donlevy. After 3 years rotting away in the joint, Bianco learns that his wife has committed suicide, apparently after having been brutally raped by psychopathic thug Tommy Udo, Richard Widmark, in his very first role, and that his 2 young daughters are living in an orphanage. Bianco then decides that it's in his and his family's best interest to turn state's evidence and make a deal with the DA. After a bit of fairly complicated legal maneuvering, Bianco squeals on his fellow thieves, including Udo, is released, and testifies at Udo's trial. Udo is not convicted, however, and the final third of the film is devoted to Bianco's increasingly desperate attempts to ensure that the safety of his family from the giggling killer.
Yeah, although I will make one correction there. It's not Udo who's implied to have raped his wife. It's Rizzo.
Is it Rizzo? Oh,
yeah.
Yes, okay.
Although I'll get more to that as well, because that's kind of something that was sort of stricken from the film to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But
it was stricken from the film. I just missed the character, but yeah.
But no, that's
my
excellent.
apologies.
No, that's excellent.
Every time I heard it, I just think of the Jerky Boys.
All right, so since Paul's back, I'm going to go to you first, sir. Ask your sort of general opinion of this film.
Why don't you just throw me on the fire then?
Yeah, well, that's what we're doing here, bitch. Come on, huh?
Overall, it's a pretty good crime drama, cop drama. As a father, I know exactly what he's feeling, you know what I mean? But it's kind of interesting to see him trying to cling on to a life that doesn't actually care about him. You know what I mean? That kind of aspect, and the sacrifices that he makes. For a man in such of a position that should know not to trust anybody, he trusts the wrong people all the time, it seems, half the time, and gets him in the trouble that he's in. Overall, it's a fun film. It seems like, you know, the self-sacrificing man is definitely played in there. I've actually, Nettie's really hot, and really hot, and it's just was actually kind of fun to see an ending was actually more positive than negative. So overall, I mean, it doesn't do a lot, but when it does do things, it doesn't really hold back and shows you how bad some of these people could be, if you know what I mean. So I mean, a pretty good movie overall. That's my really quick thought of it.
All right, Daniel.
I would agree with pretty much everything Paul said. I think that it's interesting in that it's a film that I think we're used to with these noir films. A man who stands alone. Sort of somebody who's standing against kind of institutional pressures or against the bad guys, and these kind of morally compromised characters and this sort of thing. And you really don't get this here. I mean, our lead Bianco he's a small man. I kind of talked about this a little bit last week with Gene Hackman's characters in both of the films we talked about last week. But he's kind of subject to the same institutional forces of the rest of society. He's a man who is kind of forced into these circumstances by economics. He just doesn't have the ability to earn for his family, so he has to steal, and then he ends up in prison. And it's almost like he's not a particularly good man. He's not a particularly bad man. He's just kind of a guy who is playing the hand he's dealt. I wouldn't even say he makes bad decisions. I think he makes relatively good decisions. He's just kind of, this is just what the system does. I think it's the film is unusual.
If you don't mind me saying, he doesn't always make the best decision, but he is an honorable guy. Like, he does have a code of honor he runs by, and he finds himself in the situation where he had a past criminal record, and the fact that he had a past criminal record discriminates against him as far as trying to get a new job, and that throws him back into crime. So they do make a point of that in the film.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's even in the kind of intro sequence.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would, I actually would like to dig into whether or not he's an honorable man. I don't think he's particularly honorable, honestly. I mean, again, I don't think he's a terrible person. I think that he makes the decisions he does. Like, if you're saying like he didn't squeal on his buddies, I think that that's more of a fear.
Well, okay, maybe honorable is the wrong word. Maybe he's a principled man. I think he thinks he's going to be taken care of. He thinks his wife and kids are going to be taken care of, and he would rather just let that happen than to get stabbed by somebody for squealing. But I don't think he feels any particular moral compunction about squealing. I think he's just like, I mean, that's the point. It's the kiss of death to squeal on your compatriots. But I don't get the sense that, like, you don't get, or I don't. I mean, just kind of watching this, I don't get the sense that he has this big moral compunction. I think it's more like, well, we're just not supposed to do that.
Band of brothers where you don't do that kind of thing. It's just, you just don't do that, and if you do, you get killed. They always have like a late Mr. Rob feel to me, though. At the same time, stealing because I have to, that kind of thing.
Oh God, I mean, there's definitely that, and I think that where I land is it's interesting. I mean, this film is notably shot in a lot of the locations that it is set in. Which is it kind of has that kind of photorealism kind of aspect to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's also unique, or I won't say unique, but it's unusual in that it focuses very much on kind of the process of justice and the way that the kind of justice system works, which is unusual for this kind of film. We're used to kind of seeing like, oh, the cops are after me, but we don't like get the sense of like, oh, and then I've got a parole violation and that sort of thing. I mean, the kind of focus on the legal system is, at least for kind of the middle third or so, is unusual for a film of this structure. That's actually, for me, I mean, I think we're going to talk about Udo and Richard Widmark here, and that's kind of what everybody focuses on in this film, because Richard Widmark is brilliant in this film. I'm not trying to say he's not. But I actually thought that probably the most compelling thing is the kind of the focus on the legalism and the focus on the way this guy has just been fucked over by everybody. That he thinks the DA is kind of fucking him over, his fellow criminals are fucking him over, his own lawyer is fucking him over, and he sometimes seems aware of it and sometimes doesn't. And I think that that's a really, I hate to say realistic, but that's a very straightforward way of viewing it. I mean, most of us in this situation, if you and I were in this situation, you're kind of like, well, my lawyer says he's going to take care of my wife, and then when he doesn't, you're, well, what do I do now? Except to trust this DA and that sort of thing. I mean, he's a victim of larger forces.
He's just grabbing at options that are up, and they're not the best options, but he's grabbing at the only ones he can get.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's, for me, what I kind of end within the film is that ultimately how else was this gonna go? You know, except the way it did, and he's just a cog in this big machine. He luckily ends the film in a positive place, but that certainly could have ended in tragedy very, very easily. You know, so.
Yeah, I find this a lot different from a lot of noirs, especially even of the period, because, like you said, it does focus more on sort of like the process, like the legal process, as far as what people like the main character would go through. It's not a film filled with action. It's not filled with a lot of shooting and stuff. For the first 2/3 of the film, what interaction you do see between Victor Mature and Richard Widmark, they're just kind of hanging out together. Like, Richard Widmark's character doesn't like him at all, but they're at least cordial with each other. And it's only like the last third of the film that even any tension or anything really starts to build in the film. For the most part,
I mean, there are only like 5 or 6 gunshots in the entire movie, and that's all during the first like 10 minutes and the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, but I did really like that. I liked the way this one went. Like, it was focusing more on Victor Mature's character and the stuff he was going through, and it took more of a realistic look at what would happen in the situation. Like, it's not a film strictly about Tommy Udo going after him for the entire film. That is sort of a trope that would happen in a lot of film noirs. What happens in the last third of this film is almost like the plot for, like, say, Cape Fear, right? Yeah. Where it's just Max Cady going after the lawyer for the entire film. And there's plenty of other films that are like this as well. But this one takes a much more realistic approach, and I really appreciated that. I really enjoyed this. Like you were mentioning, it was basically shot on location for the most part, so everything here was shot in New York. They even tell you at the beginning of the film, all of this was shot in New York and on location. Like they do the train ride is actually shot on the train to Ossining. Bronx County Jail was featured in this. The criminal courts building, the hotel, Maguri, a couple of nightclubs actually in New York City were shown, and also Sing Sing, the famous prison Sing Sing. They have that great shot where you see like the 300 cell blocks going all the way back. Like, none of that's a matte painting. That's just the shot. And It's got a really great depth to it. It looks really good. As a consequence of the fact that they filmed all on location, this is one of the earliest films where you see a real working toilet on film. Which was a big controversy before, Psycho had a flushing toilet on film, So I really like that. That's awesome. I do think we should get right into Widmark here, because this is a pretty exceptional performance. This was his first role, and this was a role that got him an Academy Award nomination, and I believe his only Academy Award nomination, actually. He just plays this really great, notable psychopath, like one of the first really notable psychopaths on screen. He was influenced by the Joker from the Batman comics. Richard Widmark apparently was a fan of the Batman comics. He saw the Joker. The Joker character in the original Batman comics was actually like a straight-up psychopath. Before they hit the 1950s and they had the comics code come in and turn everything comical and jokey and shit. So that's sort of where he drew some of his performance from, and he's got this big smile on his face most of the time, and he's cackling. He's like, you squirt. Yeah. I love it. I absolutely love it. But interesting enough, that performance kind of went in cycles with the Batman continuity. It influenced Gershwin, who did the Riddler in the 1960s Batman. He took a lot of his performance from that. Also, the Batman the animated series from the early 90s. The Joker in that series took a lot from that performance, and actually that movie they did, The Mask of the Phantasm, where they retcon the Joker's origins. You see him as basically a mob enforcer who is definitely Tommy Udo. Like, he is just totally Tommy Udo. And also Jack Nicholson's performance in the Batman film from '89, I think that's totally Tommy Udo in that performance. Like, it's basically Tommy Udo if he got to be 50, right? So I really like it. I'll just throw it out to you guys what you think of Widmark's performance in this.
Well, I like it. I really do. I like his. I like the fact that he's always smiling and giggling and joking and you're my pal, aren't you? Yeah, you're my. and that means I'm gonna kill you. You know what I mean? I like that. I do like the fact that I've had friends like that, where like they're the real bad guys and you really shouldn't be friends with them, but you like them and they're what I mean, but they're really crazy and weird. But if you piss them off, they could fuck you up. That kind of thing. So. Yeah, it was pretty interesting to see him play that character. I did not know about the Batman link.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's ever been really confirmed that like the Mask of the Phantasm, where they do the Joker's origin and stuff, if that is a continuation of that, like that's a real link. But I mean, I watch it and I go, come on, that has to be where they got where they got that from. Like Tommy Udo is a direct influence back on their Joker origin in that series. And I mean, it just makes sense, and it works really well. The guy, he just does a great psychopath. Like, he's just fucking nuts.
Double-crossing squealers, both of you.
What's the matter? I don't know nothing.
So the yellow squirt beat it, huh? Took a powder, huh? That rat. Where is he? Where'd he go? I'm asking you, where's that squealing son of yours? You think a squealer can get away from me? Huh? You know what I do to squealers? I let them have it in the belly. So they can roll around for a long time thinking it over. Worse than him. Telling me he's coming back. You lying old hag.
No, I'm sick. Let me go. No.
On a train, huh?
Hey, where you going? No.
This is why no one is squealing.
Not outside. I can't move. I'm sick. No.
And
well, it's clearly a star-making performance. I mean, it really is one of those. One of the reasons I wanted to talk about other stuff before we dug into this is just because, like, it's so easy when you look at this film to kind of go, yeah, Victor Maturi's doing his thing. There's a pretty girl. There's some maneuvering. There's some other stuff, and then like, oh my God, Richard Widmark is fucking amazing in this film. And to the degree that I think one of the things is that Widmark's performance seems really modernistic. This is pre kind of Stanislavski method. This is pre the kind of more naturalistic acting style. But at the same time, you could take that performance and like plop it into something modern, and it feels very contemporary, even 60 years later. I think that it's tempting to almost overstate it, in terms of its, I guess it's difficult to overstate how influential that must have been. I mean, because, Batman influences Widmark, and then Widmark does his performance, and that influences all the future versions of Batman, sure, but also, how many giggling psychopaths have we seen in movies? How many kind of, like, detached psychopathic characters have we seen? How many giggling killers and that sort of thing? And it seems like to some degree a whole lot of that can be traced back to this moment right here. Of course, it feels modern. It's been aped so many times, by other actors. It's also even from the distance of 70 years or 60 years, it's incredibly watchable. A lot of these old movies feel like homework. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just like you're so distant from them at this point that kind of watching them is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna watch it, but it feels like, oh, I've got to take notes. I've got to kind of like. Widmark's performance feels very fresh and new and feels very entertaining and fun. Aside from any other conversation we have about the meaning of the film or whatever, it feels very much like, oh yeah, I'm just sitting here and I'm just watching this great performance.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you go into this and it's like, okay, it's a movie from 1947. You don't expect to see performance like that. Like,
no.
it just totally takes you off guard. And I'll throw this out to you both. Do you feel like, and honestly, I'll just say right now, I personally don't feel this way, but do either of you feel like he even like sort of skirts at chewing the scenery at all? Because I don't feel like he does. Like it feels very authentic to me. Even when he's just giggling uncontrollably, it feels like this guy is like a straight up psychopath that I believe.
Mm-hmm. Basically, he's a hired insane man, and he does a great job at it. There's another one that I was just thinking about too, that if you break it down, basically he's just a hired psychopath. But you know, and then like you said, we've seen it so many times in films now. But if this is like one of the first actual things, then this is something that has to be held high because of that, because it's influenced so much other things later.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say it's a mannered performance. If you're asking me, does it seem like he's chewing the scenery? No, I don't think he's outsized for the movie he's in. I don't think he's drawing overdue attention to himself. I think it does feel like a performance in the sense of, you know, it doesn't feel... I mean, again, it's pre-method. It's you know, that sort of idea of kind of how we generate characters. And so any performance from that era is going to feel slightly detached from a kind of modern perspective. But at the same time, it feels very much a part of the world he's in. You know, it doesn't feel like, you know, I mean, it would be easy with a performance like this to basically, I'm acting in my own little movie, and then, you know, there's this other movie that's kind of happening around me, sort of thing, and that isn't the way this feels. It does feel integrated into this larger world, and I think that's, I mean, I don't even think that's Widmark. As much as I admire Widmark, I think that's the film itself supports the performance. I think that there's enough other stuff going on that, you know, then when you cut to Widmark kind of going off and doing his giggling killer thing, it feels like, yes, this is the threat that we're putting in front of Victor Mature, as opposed to feeling like it's just kind of isolated or, you know, inauthentic. I mean, it does feel authentic to the world, you know.
It's interesting because it was a really influential performance. When people, like, I think the producers who started like seeing this when it would start playing, it was like, okay, we got to promote. Like, it was supposed to be a Victor Mature vehicle. It was supposed to be about him for the most part, because he was a big-time star. He was, you know, a growing star. He was the sort of, you know, ruggedly handsome kind of leading man of the day. But people are seeing his performances like, we need to promote the fuck out of Richard Widmark, because this movie is about Tommy Udo more than anything else. We need to see him in this. So that was what became sort of the focus of the promotion for this. And it was so influential. A famous New York mobster named Joe Gallo, who was known as Crazy Joe, he basically patterned himself after Richard Widmark's character. He started dressing like him, started acting like him. He eventually died in 1972, and he was like wiped out by rival gangsters. But he actually like basically patterned himself after Richard Widmark's performance, and gained some of his reputation from like acting like this guy. So
it is kind of one of those things. We were talking. I mean, going back to The Long Goodbye, you know, we were kind of talking about how so many of the real life criminals and cops act like, you know, movies. You know, act like, you know, and so we do kind of see that it does happen over and over again. And you know, a performance like this, I can understand how, like, if you're going to be a hired thug and you're going to, you know, do this for a living, you're going to make yourself sound like this guy because, like, this guy's fucking terrifying. Like, of course, you know, like, I get that completely. You know?
Yeah. I'll throw it over here. What did you guys think of Victor Mature's performance, though? Because this was supposed to be sort of a vehicle for him, and this is a guy who actually has a reputation, or had a reputation, for not being the best actor, and he's a guy who even admitted that he basically did the job for the money so he could retire early. But a lot of people also cite this as his best performance ever. I personally had no issues with his performance in this. I thought he was great. And I've seen him in a couple other things where he was kind of dogging it. I thought he was fucking awesome in this. I thought he played the sort of everyday guy caught in like a really bad situation. I thought he did a really good job of it.
Well, I'd have to agree with that 100%. That's exactly what I thought about him the whole time. It's basically a snake without its teeth. You know what I mean? Like he's up against the wall, and they don't let him get away from the wall the whole film. He's always up against the wall, and he feels helpless the whole time. That's what I got out of it. So he's just grabbing at whatever he can grab because he has no real hold on life. Like he has no idea what the hell he's actually doing. It seems like half the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Mature, I'm not. I mean, I don't think he's great. I think he's fine. It's hard to talk about anybody's performance but Tommy Udo in this film, just because he's so good. I kind of think about The Dark Knight, where Heath Ledger is so good in that film. It's kind of hard to talk about anybody else's performance. Not that anybody else is bad, but they're not on that same level, and so it is kind of. And that was I mean, again, Batman. We're talking about Batman, obviously, but it is. I do kind of think of it on that level. I mean, Victor Mature is. I mean, he's doing his job. He's acting. I think if anything, he's a little bit too big and masculine. Like he feels a little bit too like kind of a tough guy. Like I almost want him to be a little bit more kind of a Gene Hackman figure from Night Moves or something, or
maybe Jimmy Stewart instead.
Jimmy Stewart, or like I kind of want him to be a little bit more of an ordinary guy, just kind of like doing what he has to do to survive, as opposed to kind of feeling like.
Because he's a big beefy motherfucker. Like he looks like a mob enforcer, right?
He looks like he looks like a tough guy. Like he looks like kind of an iron-jawed hero.
Yeah, I mean that's what I like about him, because back then you don't screw around with certain people, and I hate to sound stereotypical, but men were men back then. I don't know if you want to say it. So he plays that overly masculine role, just as a something to say. I don't know really how to describe that. And the other thing is, I like the fact that he didn't play a whimpering, whining, crying, I can't handle this kind of a role. He played most of the people that I know. He's straight-faced. Okay, what do I have to do now? Okay, whatever. Okay, whatever. Yeah, screw you, and walks away. You know what I mean? And so I kind of like that. It's more of a realistic idea. The way I know with people in my life, when they're up against the wall, they close down. They don't open up, if you know what I mean.
I could go along with that, but I think that the reason that we read him, like Mature's performance, that way is because he isn't able or doesn't choose to give us a sense of the kind of inner, complexity, the turmoil or whatever. And I think, like, certainly from a modern perspective, we would expect an actor in this situation to kind of give a sense of, like, the thought process of this guy, whereas he's kind of a blank. And you don't really get what's going on in his head. I think if there is a kind of a major flaw in the film, it is that he's a little bit too much of a kind of granite-jawed hero. I'd like him to be a little bit less that. I'd like to get a little bit more of the vulnerability.
Did you see? You think though, but maybe in the line of business, let's just say the poker face is the best face to wear.
Well, yeah, but this guy isn't supposed to be, like, super tough guy. He's supposed to be a guy who's forced into this by his circumstances, Like, I get that. I mean, I get that he is a guy who has to put on that face, but I don't get that, like, that's who he really is, like, as a character. Especially because in the sequences where he's, like, hanging out with his kids and his wife and everything, you still kind of get this kind of slightly blank, granite-jawed kind of guy. And that's when he shouldn't be that. He should be warm and comforting and loving, and like I'm really happy to have my job as a bricklayer and not have to be a tough guy anymore. And I
got a little bit when he actually met his daughters for the first time. I got a little bit more of emotion out of it. Not much, I grant you, but a little bit more than nothing. But,
personally, I'll agree with Paul there. I actually kind of liked his performance when he's doing his family life thing. I personally thought it worked pretty well. I bought into it. It wasn't the best I've ever seen of that sort of thing, of course, but I mean, I thought he did a pretty amicable job as sort of the big, hulking but kind-hearted father figure. I thought he kind of pulled it off fairly well. And I think that actually is the sort of vulnerability that sort of comes out of his character, where he is not necessarily a bad guy. He's a guy who is pushed up against a wall, like Paul was saying. And I mean, for me personally, I bought into the performance for that.
I don't think it's a terrible performance. Maybe I'm overstating. I guess I'm just kind of on that, like, if we're gonna like sit down and critique it, if we're gonna like kind of like analyze it, which is kind of what we're podcasting about it, If there is a weakness, that's kind of where the weakness is, and it's not even like I mean, I think you could view it as an acting choice, or you could view it as a kind of a story choice. I guess for me, the film is complex enough and honest enough about this character that to some degree I think I kind of almost look at it from more of a modern point of view and say in 2016 I would expect a film like this to give us a little bit more of a hint of the man behind this mask, as opposed to pretending the mask is the man. But I understand that by the standards of 1948, this is a perfectly acceptable. You know, I mean, this is the performance he gave. I don't think that this is bad for the time period.
Well, I always look at it like the mask is the only thing I want you to see, because I don't want to show you anything else. I mean, that's the way I look at it. Sure. Maybe this might have been Indiana Jones shooting the guy instead of a knife scene, but I think it actually works. Instead of like having a sword fight, he just shoots the guy. So this might be a little underacting on his part, but his underacting I think fits pretty well for me.
I mean, I get him as a strong silent type. I get him as a, you know, I don't let my mask show, and I mean that's fine. That's a perfectly reasonable interpretation of the performance, and it's a perfectly fine performance.
I didn't do a Batman reference, so boom.
There's that.
I'll just throw in here. I do want to talk about his relationship with Nettie here, but I just want to preface this with this little bit of trivia here. Originally, Patricia Morrison, who was to play Victor Mature's wife in this film, is attacked and raped by a gangster, and that's the Rizzo character that they talk about in, you know, you never see him on the film, but they talk about him. He was supposed to be watching out for her while Mature was in prison, and afterwards she commits suicide, of course. And they felt like these scenes were too brutal for the film, so they basically had to cut her part entirely out of the film. So she's just mentioned in passing, basically, and it focuses more on Victor Mature's romance with the Nettie character played by Colleen Gray, who, by the way, I think is, like Paul was saying, she's fucking gorgeous as hell, and I think she does a really great job as well acting. And I'll just throw it out to you two. What did you think of the sort of relationship between the two? Because I thought that was one of the strongest parts of the film for me. I thought the sort of budding romance worked really well, and I liked the sort of physical performance that both of them gave when they were interacting with each other.
Okay. Well, you know, I did like it. I think she has, you know, as a woman maybe of the time, I think I know many women today that. Why would you choose the dirtbag? I'm like the mobster. I'm like, what the hell? But I do like the endearing, you know, I liked you ever since I saw you when I was a kid, and I grew up, and I, you know, this and that, babysitting. I think she was a babysitter for the kids and stuff. I did like that. I think her overly attached girlfriend character was played very, very well, and I was jealous every time she was on screen. I was like, you dick. You know what I mean? Like, so no, I'm very much jealous the whole time of him. So I mean, so that just shows you she did a very, very good job at that. And overall, I don't have too much to say, but I did think it was a very interesting part of the film. And half the time, I was screaming for them to just get on a taxi and drive away and just never come back and don't get shot. But the film is what it is. So there you go.
I think she gives I mean, she's very effective as an actress in terms of kind of selling what really would be an easy thing to just feel completely artificial. This relationship that we never see the beginnings of, and it's like, oh, I'm in love with you because you know, this idea is always like it leads to some really problematic places in so many movies. But I think here it's pretty effectively done. I mean, I buy the relationship because she buys the relationship, essentially. Plenty of people who go to prison, have people on the outside who, you know, I always loved you, or I care about you, and kind of can build relationships and that sort of thing. Like, I bought it on a kind of just thematic level, on a character level, that, yeah, she kind of fell for him when she was young, and maybe that's a little bit creepy, but, you know, she's an adult. She can make her own decisions. She's taking care of the kids, and she wants this guy in her life. You know, I bought that. I think that, you know...
This is also pure, like, she must be what, maybe... I think she's maybe presented as about maybe 20 at the most in the film.
She's young, yeah. I mean, if you think she's a babysitter and the kids are what? I mean, 8 or 9, something like that.
Yeah,
and
she might be pushing 18 in the film, in film life.
And he's presented as 29, and then he goes to jail, so he's like 32 when he gets out of jail. So that kind of relationship definitely was not. It was actually the norm almost for back in the day. So it's like there's no real.
Plenty of subcultures. It's not really unusual today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, like a guy and a 30-year-old guy and an 18-year-old girl. It's sort of there are lots of kind of socio-political reasons for that, but it's not uncommon.
One of my girlfriends was 38 when I was 20, so
sure.
I mean, that's the way it is.
Chicka chicka bow wow, right there. I bet you learned a lot in that relationship.
Yeah, not to date older women.
Oh, fuck. So yeah, I guess we can start to sort of go towards our final thoughts on this. I'll jump to you first, Paul. If you have any sort of final thoughts you want to throw at this movie.
The only thing that I thought was forced, changed, odd, or whatnot, etc., was the ending. The ending just seemed a little haphazard, and I don't know if that was his plan. I'm like, well, you're playing shit. You know what I mean? Like, that's a horrible plan. You couldn't at least put a metal plate under your damn jacket. You're in a restaurant, for God's sakes.
Well, Fistful of Dollars was still 20 years away. So.
Well, yeah, in the original script, he actually did die in the original script.
And that's what I was actually about to say. I was like, it seems like they changed it right on the end. And by the way, he survived. So don't cry, kids. I mean, like, no,
you don't even get a shot of him with his kids. It's just like over the skyline, the narrator.
Well, I mean, yeah, you've got the Nettie voiceover at the beginning and the end, and it's obviously piped in. It's obviously not part of the original script, right?
And basically as far as I was concerned when I was watching the film, the Nettie did foreshadowing of his death. You know what I mean? And I'm like, he said he ended up with a cop's bullet in his gut, and I'm like, that wasn't a cop's bullet. That was Udo's bullet. What the hell? When I watched the end of the film. In the beginning she was talking about how he got a bullet in the ass, like, running away, and how his father before him, like, 20 years ago, by a cop's gun.
Yeah.
Yeah. But just like him, she made that little line, just like him. But, look, if you're going to make a guy live in the end, don't have Udo empty his rounds like a maniac.
Shot him a lot, didn't he?
Yeah, he did shoot him. He had more pricks in him than a pincushion. So, I mean, it's just like, this guy completely dead, and then he pulled, miraculously into the ambulance, and then it goes, and I'm like,
Richard is a big beefy guy. He could have took 5 or 6 shots.
He's basically like Jason Voorhees. That's where Jason Voorhees got his inspiration. He watched The Kiss of Death, and that's how they got the inspiration for that.
I mean, Tommy Udo himself takes like 3 shots before he goes down, and he's still alive. So
yeah, he's still reaching for the gun. I'm like, you scrawny chicken bone motherfucker, you'd be dead now.
It's just those fucking gangster weapons and their shitty calibers, basically.
Well, they're all on the pot, is what it's going on.
That's right. They're all on the Mary Jane. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but that'd be the only thing that I say is weird about the film is actually the end is a little bit haphazard and a little bit forced in, as you could just see, you could tell how it's like that doesn't feel right. But everyone likes the Dorothy ended up home in Kansas kind of ending. So
yeah. All right, Daniel, your sort of final thoughts on this one.
Sure. One thing I didn't talk about was just the kind of the role of the cops, the role of DA in the film, which I think is if there's the other kind of big, like, I'm not even to complain about the film for 1948, but just again, like I kind of mentioned when we were talking before we started recording, I'm like, I really want to see a remake of this from a modern perspective, and I really want to see like the role of like the DA is way too saintly-hearted in this.
He is, isn't he? Yeah.
I mean, it's these noir pictures are really commonly, where there's a dude who's and it's always a guy. Like, let's just admit it, it's always a guy, and he's beset on all sides by various institutional forces, whether it be crime or law enforcement or whatever, and like he has to kind of make his own way and figure out how to, make his life better, or kill the bad guy or whatever, and I really wish that you got a better sense of like the kind of corruption and the kind of the evils within the law enforcement side. We do get his lawyer kind of says, oh no, I'm gonna get you out, don't worry, I'm gonna be working on your parole, and then like 3 years later there's no movement whatsoever.
Yeah, well that guy is explicitly a mob lawyer as well.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And but I mean, there is this kind of I don't know, I've been paying attention to some like true crime stuff lately, and I mean you see like all these like false confessions and the way that cops manipulate witnesses and kind of make this stuff happen, and DAs just try to make their case happen. Like they don't give a shit about the truth. I mean, their goal is to win the case, and so whatever. And I think like kind of exploring the perfidies in the legal side would be something that I really would like to see. Yeah, again, I don't blame this film for not having it, but it is kind of a weak point for me in terms of like really thinking about this film, because it is very focused on kind of the legal maneuvering. I mean, we kind of talked about Udo, and I mean, most of what people talk about in this film is the last 30 minutes, which is great. That's just a whole hour that gets there, which is really all about Bianco and his, kind of the way he's kind of navigating the legal system almost. And I wish that had been a little bit more nuanced. But, so many of these films are basically just like, well, you have to portray the cops as good guys because otherwise we don't get the funding to make it and that sort of thing. But I do think it's a weakness in the film. I do think that it stops the film short of like being really, really something special.
Mm-hmm. I always thought it was really funny because the legal system, how you say about him navigating it, I just got this mental image after watching the film of a stick being him just going down a river. It was like he's not navigating shit. He's just fucking. He's getting banged around and washed and this and this and this and that. And the legal system. It's interesting how they use him to get other things and manipulate and but you're a good guy and this and this. You don't give a crap. You know what I mean? You're just using him and doing this.
I mean, I agree with that. I did use the term navigating, but he's not. I mean, he really is a stick in a stream. Arguably, I mean, what happens at the end where he does take control of his own destiny and he does kind of get the happy ending. That's the one point where he does kind of step outside of like what everybody else is just kind of saying that he should do. And you could kind of view this as kind of a self-actualization through trying to kind of take his own agency and that sort of thing in horrifyingly unrealistic ways. Like no person.
Well, they didn't write in where he went back to Sing Sing for 15 years for slugging a cop.
Right, exactly. There's. I guess I just kind of I was really kind of like I'd love to see like a legal drama built out of this material, as opposed to a noir, and I don't know, I just that's kind of where I landed on it. Like I liked the film. It's just like it doesn't go far enough.
I'll just briefly talk here. There were 2 remakes for this. There was a 1958 Western remake of this that I've not seen, but from what I've read about it, apparently it's kind of a mix between a Western and almost a horror movie to some degree. From what I understand, it sounds like it basically takes the last third of the film, which a lot of sort of noir pictures would do after this, take that sort of premise and make it the whole film. So, like we were talking offline, Cape Fear is a good example of this, where the antagonist is threatening the family through the whole film instead of the last third of the film, like with this. So I'm actually quite interested in checking that out. I guess you're saying it's on YouTube, so I'm.
Yeah, I think I think it's like something with the word fiend in it. I forget the exact title, but it is on YouTube. Last I looked. So
yeah, the Fiend Who Walked the West is what it's called. Yeah.
I'm gonna try to watch that for next week, and we'll see if I actually get that watched. But it looked like it was worth a kind of glance at least. So I'll try to talk about it. I didn't get a chance to watch it this week, so.
I'm gonna try to watch as well. Of course, the other remake is a very loose remake called Kiss of Death from 1995, and this is the one that sort of stars David Caruso in his first bid for Hollywood stardom outside of NYPD Blue, which was a dismal fucking failure for him. Nicolas Cage and Samuel L. Jackson are also in this, as well as Helen Hunt, of all people. I rewatched this
Hold
week.
on, was this made in 1995?
Is that the one that actually has her tits in it? Because there's one with her tits in it.
I don't remember if her tits are in it, but
I have pictures. They're great.
Yeah. But David Caruso, he's a good actor, but he was terrible in this. Like, he cannot carry a film. Like, he just wasn't ready to carry a film at this point. And he did a couple films where he was expected to carry a film, and he just couldn't do it. This film basically sort of skims from the original plot to a certain degree. Like, it's got the criminal forced by the DEA to work for them, but here it's like you have to go undercover, you have to integrate with the gang, and the gang is led by this guy, and then like his son is the Nicolas Cage character. The Tommy Udo character is just totally wiped out from this film, so it's more Nicolas Cage here. Ironically, of course, it's like Nicolas Cage actually steals the show here, just like Richard Widmark stole the show in the original film. And it's actually a really great Nicolas Cage performance, and he's given the worst fucking material to work with, but he makes fucking gold out of it. Like, anyone else who tried to do this fucking performance would have just fucking fallen flat on their faces. Nicolas Cage actually does a great job with this. Somehow makes it work, even though this character is just totally inconsistent and totally off the fucking wall. David Caruso, he doesn't sell it. Like we were saying, how Victor Mature isn't necessarily believable so much as like this sort of tough guy kind of shit. David Caruso is not believable as a tough guy in this at all. Like, he's just kind of a pushover almost in this film to a degree where it's like, why am I even following this guy? Samuel L. Jackson has this part as a cop who hates David Caruso and has to fucking watch him, and he gets shot in the face, and his eye is constantly fucking, like, his tear ducts are fucked up, so he's constantly fucking crying and shit.
Find all these motherfucking mobsters in this motherfucking underground.
Pretty much, there's too much shit going on in this film. Like,
yeah, this sounds terrible. Like this does not sound like a good movie. I just can't. I'm kind of just flabbergasted by the fact that you said David Caruso is a good actor. I'm like, I stopped listening at that point. I'm like, no, this is not.
Maybe I overstated a little bit. I think David Caruso is okay depending on the film he's in.
Okay,
but he's not a lead actor.
David Caruso is an actor.
Yeah. He's not a lead guy. He's not a lead actor in a film. He's not a lead actor on a TV show. Let's just put it that way.
Sure.
Yeah. So okay. So stop attacking me. But yeah, that film is. It could have been good. I mean, it's actually worth watching for Nicolas Cage's performance, but the film itself it's not great. It's kind of shit.
It's a post-Tarantino crime film. And it's in that immediate post-Tarantino, we don't know what the fuck we're doing.
Yeah.
Sort of like that. That's kind of what it sounds like. It's just a mess.
I'll mention some quick trivia here for the film, though, and information. The budget for the film was $1.52 million. Apparently, it broke even, just at home. Eventually earned $1.65 million in rentals. It basically wasn't a big hit at the time. It was, after the fact that it earned some money. The original shooting title for this, and then it's funny because they had the opening credits where it's the screenplay and they're opening it and giving you the fucking cast and all that shit. It says shooting script or whatever. The actual title for the fucking shooting script and everything was Stool Pigeon, and they changed that. Another one was like Bad Dream or something like that.
Stool Pigeon is a better title, really. I mean, Kiss of Death is just. I mean, it's so. I don't know. It feels really generic to me. Like it just feels like. Yeah, I mean, Stool Pigeon is like, okay, I know what movie I'm watching.
It's like Fu Manchu's Kiss of Death, and we could work with anything.
But it probably wouldn't. It probably wouldn't have been so generic back in 1947. But we got so much time afterwards now on everything. But
I got confused with Kiss Me Deadly. I thought that was what we were watching this week.
Oh well, there you go. Interesting piece of trivia that I just sort of realized, and this was something where I'd actually seen a trailer for this film, and I had to look it up and see if this was actually something. The recent Coen Brothers film that just came out, Hail Caesar, with George Clooney. I was looking at him, I was like, he looks just like fucking Victor Mature in that film. And then I did a little research, and it was like basically the look of his character is patterned after Victor Mature, who went on to do like biblical epics and stuff. And the Hail Caesar film, of course, it's focused on 1950s Hollywood, the transition between the death of the big studio systems and where they were doing all these epics and stuff, and the anti-communist thing was coming in and all that shit. Apparently George Clooney the character is supposed to be somewhat of a Kirk Douglas character, but his look is patterned after Victor Mature, who Victor Mature himself did like a couple of these biblical epics and stuff during that decade. So that's really cool. I like that because I was just looking at him. I was like, that's dead on fucking Victor Mature. Like it's George Clooney with a bit more weight on him, and it's like, okay, right on, that works.
Yep.
Also, I'll just mention one more thing: the background music on this. The only notable parts are the theme that starts at the beginning and comes out also in the end. It's called Street Scene by Alfred Newman, and Alfred Newman was a contract composer for 20th Century Fox at the time, so his theme was actually used in several films in that period, and that's probably what we're going to go out with when we end the podcast. But, yeah. So that's it.
We're going to do a movie god?
No, we weren't going to do a movie god, unless you have something.
Yeah, sure, I got one.
Okay, we'll throw it at us.
We can play some movie god. I'm down.
Okay, let's see. I gotta remember their names. That's the problem because I thought about these two. And it was Carrie Fisher and do you ever get that Sigourney Weaver?
Carrie Fisher and Sigourney Weaver. Okay, so we'll just do a quick round here. So we'll get both Daniel and I's answers.
Yeah.
Daniel, you go first.
I killed Carrie Fisher. I'm sorry, like that's not for me. Sigourney Weaver means way. I mean, as much as you might love Star Wars, which I'm kind of like iffy on Star Wars, but Star Wars is it would have survived with someone else in the Princess Leia role, but I think Sigourney Weaver is just like this astonishing presence in so many movies. Like Carrie Fisher is great. I have no issues with Carrie Fisher, but Sigourney Weaver is just a giant for me. So I get rid of Carrie Fisher's career and not Sigourney Weaver's.
Yeah, you know what? I got to say the same thing, but I'll just put a little caveat on there. Carrie Fisher definitely looks better in a bikini than Sigourney Weaver does. That's just personal preference, of course. But, of course, Sigourney Weaver, if we're just going to run it down to that base level, Sigourney Weaver definitely looked great in panties and Alien.
Actually, the hottest I thought she was Galaxy Quest.
Yeah, she was great in Galaxy Quest as well. Yeah. But yeah, Sigourney Weaver has the better longevity as far as career and performances go. She didn't have the alcoholism problems that kind of ruined her career for quite a while.
I have the Carrie Fisher sex tape. So.
Oh, well, okay, well, there you go. Carrie Fisher came back. She's done some excellent roles later in her career. She was definitely decent in the new Star Wars film. I had no issues with that. I thought it was actually kind of emotionally touching when I was watching the film. I got a little bit of the feels coming in, watching her and Harrison Ford talk about how old they are and shit. That's awesome. But, yeah, Sigourney Weaver, she just had a way more important career, and it's definitely one I would not want to throw away.
I think she makes the first two Alien movies. I know that you don't. You're kind of more on just the first one. But even if you just count the first one, I think she is so integral to that in a way that Carrie Fisher just isn't to Star Wars. And that film wouldn't exist without Sigourney Weaver.
I just love Weaver in Alien. I love her in fucking Working Girl, Death and the Maiden, all kinds of other stuff she was in between then. Ghostbusters.
Sigourney Weaver is someone who had, a good 25-year, really phenomenal career, and it's no insult to Carrie Fisher to say she just didn't have that.
Yeah, and honestly, that's actually a really good. That's a really good pick that you gave to us, though, Paul, because when you think about it, Carrie Fisher and Sigourney Weaver both started out as amateurs on really big movies. Like their careers started a lot similar sort of occurrences where, Carrie Fisher, just sort of an amateur actress on Star Wars. Now, no one expected Star Wars to do shit at the time, but it blew up, and then her career was made by that film. Sigourney Weaver, she was just basically picked because she was the best for the role, because they were casting basically asexually for Alien at the time. Like, all the roles were written without any sex in mind. Like they could have easily cast a dude for her role in that, and she was just the best one for it, and she excelled in that. So yeah, that was an excellent choices there, Paul.
Yeah, no,
I just haven't been around for a while.
It makes me want to go and watch some Sigourney Weaver films. Really, like now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, I need to go like dig up some of the mid-period Sigourney Weaver I haven't watched. So thank you, Paul. I appreciate that.
There you go. Give you something to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll go to Daniel. Tell us about your Doctor Who podcast.
My Doctor Who podcast, you can find that at oispaceman.libsyn.com. That's oispaceman, all one word, .libsyn.com. We do classic and new series. I do it with my wife. It's a lot of fun. We talk a lot about like overly intellectualizing politics and stuff, and a cheesy TV show from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So, yay, congratulations, go us. We just recorded for Caves of Androzani, which is widely considered to be the single greatest Doctor Who story of all time. And in a couple of days, you can listen to that episode and see what we thought about that, and whether we have controversial opinions about that, which, spoiler alert, we do. So, yay.
Right on. Paul, where can people find you on the interwebs?
So you can go and find me on YouTube at PA Brew News for some beer reviews, Funeral Dust 666, and on Facebook at Back Mountain Arts and Crafts for artsy, craftsy stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. And, of course, you can listen to the trailer at the end of this. It'll tell you where to go to find all of our stuff on Podbean. Of course, we have the Facebook group now as well, which we encourage you to join and interact with us. That's probably the best, single best place to interact with us and make suggestions for stuff you want us to review, because we're totally open for that. And we want all your criticisms, all your compliments, everything.
Come tell us what shitheads we are. We
exactly. I mean, you want to badmouth us, just do it. Just do it, constructively. And
just don't do it constructively. Just do it.
Just do it. Just run us down like fucking the pig dogs we are.
Just tell me what a racist I am. That's the key.
That's right. Daniel's used to be called a racist now. It's a thing. It's a thing this month for him.
Yeah. No, I'm. It's good. Don't worry. Tell me what a racist I am. It's great.
That's great. You fucking racist. Okay, so we're gonna
White genocide. That's my brand.
White genocide. Yeah. White genocide.
Did we switch roles here, where I'm the feminist now and he's the racist? What happened?
That's how it works. Yeah.
Awesome. It's Bizarro world. Fucking Bizarro Superman's gonna show up all of a sudden. All right, so we're gonna be out of here. We're gonna be back next week with a couple of one Robert Mitchum film and one Humphrey Bogart film. We're going to be doing the 2 versions of The Big Sleep, which should be a lot of fun. And until then, thank you everyone for listening, and thank you guys for joining me tonight, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. To see the host's other stuff, as well as links to websites and podcasts of similar interest, and as well to leave comments, questions, movie requests, and other suggestions, visit us at tmbdos.podbean.com. From there, you can also find us on iTunes. You got this, man. You got this by the ass.